So, well, you know what? Let's start with Chance then. You know, you've been working on the Call of Duty franchise from, you guys used to have to, there wasn't a console when you started, right? You had to act it out. So you've seen a lot of different iterations now. What have been the biggest challenges in putting those together?
Every console generation, you have tons of more assets you have to create because, you know, now we're working with pretty much full film quality assets. And so it's pretty much, you have to staff up really, you know. Start off with 22 people originally on the Call of Duty 1 for PC. We were only doing one SKU. And, you know, last Call of Duty probably like, you know, over 200 developers touched it, probably close to 300 developers touched it. So, yeah, just AAA games are getting bigger and more expensive. And I think that's why it's great that the indie industry is kind of picking up as well, because it's kind of balancing things. So.
Jameson, same question. You've been involved in some franchises as well, and the same thing. So tell us about that.
Well, I've been on several different franchises across the last 10 or 12 years. Oddworld, and then the Godfather series, and then Red Faction, and now Saints Row. But all of them being AAA titles, though, there's a lot of things that were very similar across the board. But just like Chance was talking about Oddworld, we had 24 people. That was our entire studio that was working on the games there. And then on the Godfather project, and even that was 7-8 years ago, we had 300 people in-house working on that thing. So the amount of people that it takes these days is going up. We're trying at Volition right now to focus on creating tools that allows us to keep the amount of people down and be able to create and iterate effectively. That seems to be the way that we're needing to go in order to get the amount of content that we can get out in the right time and budget.
You know what? Let's just go down the line here, because now, I'm sitting here thinking, we've got a lot of veterans up here that have, seen some changes. So would you like to add anything, Cordy?
What was the question?
Let's jump right to Elbert. Yes, let's jump right to Elbert. We'll get back to you on that.
What was the question?
So
Exactly.
Let's put it this way. Let's go here now. Elbert, you've also been involved with a lot of mobile, making a lot of mobile games and everything. And tell us a little bit about what you're doing now and the transition and the difference between the two as far as your daily life goes.
Well, what's funny is I haven't really moved away from mobile, because now I'm a transmedia producer, which basically means we're extending narrative past what you would see on a console. So a big example for Microsoft is Smart Glass. I built the experience for Smart Glass in Rise, where you can extend the experience past your console, where you can have it not just in front of you, but while you're in a bus, or while you're taking a dump.
Have we, and I'm guessing that from an animator's point of view, and animation is where the real difference comes in. Graphics are just extraordinary these days. Have we even tapped the surface, Chance?
Sorry, say that again? I was totally dazed. I'm just still waking up. Go ahead.
It's the soul patch, I think, yeah. So, where are we at right now, graphically speaking, Have we even come close to what, have you been pushing the capabilities, or are we going to start seeing a lot more in the very near future?
Yeah, the early games that come out on both consoles, I mean, we only get the hardware sometimes, several months before the game ships. And so we're developing based on these specs we've been given by Sony and by Microsoft. And so when the first generation of the next generation games come out, they're always, they're kind of like generation 1.5, they're kind of halfway there. We haven't had a lot of time to really just get in and tweak everything, tune our engine exactly for, all the new features. And so, I'd say in probably about another year, you're going to start seeing some really amazing games. And then 2 years after that, they're going to get better and better. I mean, look at PS3, look at GTA 5, and then look at GTA, 3 or 4. Yeah, there's so much tuning involved in developing for consoles. So yeah, we're just going to keep seeing better and better stuff as time goes on.
Nice. All right, let's get back to Cordy now. You ready?
I'm ready.
What challenges have you as a producer faced overseeing the teams that you've managed? Are they a lot bigger? Are they, what challenges do you face on a daily basis?
I think, challenges, you have a lot of different people, right? As Chance was saying earlier, with, consoles having so much more power and new features and people really pushing the envelope, teams are getting substantially larger, games are costing a lot more to develop. Usually your primary cost are your people. Your people are your greatest assets. And combining, really smart engineers and designers and animators and artists and concept artists and story and narrative design. I think that's one of the biggest shifts that I've been happy to see is just in the narrative and the narrative design, like the art of storytelling. When I graduated from Full Sail, I graduated with a degree in film, not in games, and it was really about the art of storytelling, and storytelling is really taking a front stage, I believe, in a lot of the games that are being developed today, and I think it's kind of educating other game developers to think about story and how they're doing that storytelling through every asset that they touch and create.
That's interesting. A follow-up to that, we get requests in career development all the time from people in creative writing and that are interested in getting started in games and want to write for games and whatnot. There's the one guy from creative writing out there. Thanks for being here. So this question is for you, man. So what is the best thing that he could be doing now to actually get the attention of somebody? How do you break in as a writer involved in the narrative of these games?
Writing samples, do some writing, see if, I think the indie, and I think Elbert was saying he came in from the indie channel, getting in with the indie community is really cool. There's some great opportunities there to showcase your writing abilities. Starting off lean and mean, having a place where people can go and see your work, making sure that the links work to your work so people can read your work. It's a good idea.
Yeah.
Can I add to that?
Please.
So I actually work in narrative design in Microsoft. And so we just did some hirings like a few weeks ago. And the thing is, my boss, she's the hiring manager, and the one thing that we can get people is by knowing people. So if you network efficiently, if you know a lot of people, you just need to get your name out there, so that when we come up like, oh, we need a narrative designer, or we need an editor, we need a writer, then if your name pops up in your head, we're gonna give you a call, or someone will give you a call, and then you can get an opportunity to show yourself. So it's all about knowing the right people.
Nice. Jameson, you still awake over there, man?
I am.
Awesome. So, let me put it, how do I want to say this? There's a lot of choices right now in ways to develop games and different engines that you can use and whatnot. And there's a lot of third-party engines out there. Can you talk a little bit about proprietary versus third-party, and what are the advantages and disadvantages?
Well, most of the last 10 years of my career has been making open world games, and especially in the beginning there wasn't any kind of engine out there that would kind of support that kind of architecture. So most of the places, actually, I've always worked on proprietary engines in my professional career. The benefit is it allows us to kind of tailor, our engineers can tailor exactly what we need, right? And for exactly the kind of game that we're making. But there's also a lot of benefits to, other engines, and I'm personally learning Unity on the side right now just because I want to have that knowledge and something that kind of branches out and people can kind of use everywhere, and it's a free tool, and it's getting so robust now that it can do pretty much anything that you can do with a proprietary engine.
Chance, same question.
Yeah, I think it kind of depends on what game you're making, what your goals are. I mean, for us, one of our prime goals has always been 60 frames a second, fluid gameplay, right? So we have our own engine, right? And we've been developing and working on it for a long time. But for instance, if you're doing like a shooter, a really twitchy shooter, you're not necessarily going to want to use Crysis or the CryEngine because it's very graphically intensive. Yeah, you can kind of scale it down and make it run faster, but you might, if you're going to make a first-person adventure game, you might go with CryEngine or something, because having 60 frames constantly isn't as a priority because you're not twitchy shooting. Was that your question?
Do you guys are constantly bogged down with your current projects and everything, and I'm guessing you're pretty much told how that's going to be put together as far as the engines that are being used. How do you find time to educate yourself and to continue on? Like you were saying, you're playing around with Unity and whatnot.
Well, I mean, there's also a difference between kind of the underlying engine and what we do to it for each new project. Like, if we're working on kind of, if we make a lot of new tools each time that we make something for whether it's efficiency or to kind of come up with something new that we want to do in the next game, or lessons learned, things that we can just improve on. But yeah, even if we have that base engine, we kind of have the ability to kind of do new things with it. For me, it's just in my spare time, which is almost non-existent.
Yeah.
That's why I say I'm slowly learning Unity on the side.
Yeah. Well, I'm always fascinated.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not much.
Technology changes so rapidly, and I'm always curious, and I love asking you guys, how do you find time to keep up with everything? Because, oftentimes you're working, at minimum 40 hours a week, and all this new stuff continues to evolve around you. And you can't sit down and, go to university and, learn all this stuff, but you've got to keep up with it. How do you do it?
I think personally one of the things that does tend to happen is whenever someone does something that's really good, it kind of gets migrated and people kind of emulate it in other engines. Like, a lot of times we'll look at like, hey, we heard that this engine has this particular tool, and so we'll try and figure out a way to either emulate that or, if it helps our workflow. But a lot of it really is just trying to figure out, like Chance was saying before, different tools for very specific things. And if it's a tool that is nowhere in the area that I need to look at, or an engine, or I'll learn about it, but I probably won't spend time kind of delving into it and figuring it out for myself.
Anybody else want to comment on that?
I do it because it's fun. I mean, you gotta have the passion to do, the things that you do. I mean, it's the game industry. You should be passionate about games and what you do. And it's something that, it's part of career development. I mean, at Microsoft, we always, say you always should be learning something new. It's in part of your commitment. So you just take the time of the day, or, do it at home, or do a side project, which is really the most useful way of doing it, because you can be more creative and explore and not be like, oh, I have to do it for this specific project. So it's more something that's invested in you rather than, it's for the company, but it's actually for me to be a better person.
You are a very passionate man. That's all I'm saying.
It's part of our culture. Like, it's updating yourself constantly. And I like to think about engines. Engines are critical depending on the type of game that you're creating. But I like to think of things as like engine agnostic. So when you think about an engine, it's really a tool. It's a language, right? It's something that's allowing you your creative expression or your creative freedom to achieve something. And so when you kind of think about it in terms of, hey, this is just another tool in my toolbox, and sometimes you need to go and clean out your toolbox. Sometimes you add new tools to your toolbox, and you break it down from there based on what your ultimate creative goal is.
That leads into my next thought. A lot, here at Full Sail, the game development program is not utilizing a specific engine, and a lot of times people will say, so what should I be doing? I want to go make console games after I graduate, and how do I get that experience? What advice do you have for the guys out there right now, as far as side projects? Is there one thing you would recommend over the other? Unity, Unreal, what should they be doing? Or is there really, no good answer to that?
I personally have been using the same engine not the same engine, the same evolved engine, for a while now. And so I don't have a lot of experience, using the CryEngine or Unreal, whatnot. But I know that Unity is very accessible and very flexible. So that's, one option out there. And then, of course, Unreal. I really can't I should probably ask this guy. He's used more variety.
Well, I mean, I think there's, first of all, I think the reason that the dev program focuses on engine development is because that's a useful tool. Even if they have a proprietary engine, we're constantly evolving it. So that getting in there and actually being able to help do that is a valuable tool. But as far as personally, I would say as far as branching out and kind of being able to do a little bit more, I would suggest Unity, mainly because of how how broad it is, how accessible it is, how many people are supporting it now. There's tons of tools out there for it that are free, and the tutorials that those guys are putting up on their website are amazing. So.
We talked a little bit yesterday at one of the panels. We focused on indie development, so I'm going to talk to Elbert here for a minute. I know you're very active there. Any big difference there as far as, you've done some stuff for Xbox Live. Why do that? I mean, why get your stuff up there? What's the challenge, from a student's point of view?
Well, you do that because it's a wide market out there. I mean, today mobile development isn't just about targeting one platform. It's about branching out to multiple platforms. If you see games now, they're like over on iOS, BlackBerry, Windows Phone, console, Vita, PSP, you name it, they'll be there. And that's primarily because of Unity and how easy it is to actually port your game. It's literally just click a button and set some settings, and suddenly it's there. It's like a magical experience, like coming back in the day where you have to write in C++ and you have to do porting. Porting was like a bad word. It was like, oh, why would we port? It's so expensive. It's so so hard. But now with the tools that we have today, it's such an easy thing that you forget how hard it was before. And just having market diversity so that when let's say you're a student, you want to work for some company, you can go and I've shipped on Android, iOS, Windows Phone, and this is how I actually got my job at Microsoft, because I said I ship on Windows Phone, I shipped on PC, I ship everywhere, and I know how the market is, and that's an asset for you. So it's just something that you can work on.
When you have a publisher that's spending over $100 million on a game for like a AAA title, they don't want to take chances. You don't want to just, let's try this for $100 million, right? That's where indie gaming has kind of came in a sense, like, I don't want to say save the industry, but really helped us out because, here's a few people just trying whatever game mechanic they thought of. It's something really crazy. And then whatever works, they've prototyped it, basically. So now the AAA games, the non-indie games can say, hey, look, this is fun, this is popular. And now it can be included in a AAA game without that huge risk.
Let's go down the line. How long will this generation of consoles last before we see the next generation? Any idea?
10 years, I'd say.
That's my guess too.
Hopefully longer. I don't know.
I don't think we were ready for this one, to be honest. I still think we were pushing what we had before. Yeah.
It becomes a race to see who can get their system out there first.
Yeah, right.
But if you get it too early, then that can be a problem too.
So let's shift focus here a little bit and talk about games. I want to know what specifically, let me rephrase this. I know that now as professional game developers, you guys are also passionate about playing games and enjoy and love games, but you look at them a lot differently, right? I would love to hear some thoughts on that, but most importantly, let's frame it with, what game are you playing now and why?
I'm kind of bouncing around. I've been actually probably play more like indie stuff now just because I'm kind of burned out on a lot of things. So last game I purchased was Banished. It's a $20 game made by like one person in probably Estonia or something. I've also been playing Prison Architect. Anyone play that? It's like you get to run a private prison. How fun is that?
Male or female?
I just bought what's that game? It's like DayZ without zombies where you build. Yeah, thank you, Rust. Rust is, like DayZ and Rust are just like this weird social experiment pretty much. Like, it's like, I love DayZ, but it's like, run, look for a can of food, die, run, die, run, die. Amazing social interaction, die, run, die, run, die. Amazing social interaction. That's DayZ right there. But it's awesome. You gotta invest a lot of time into it to get to those amazing moments, but it's interesting. Yeah.
So it sounds like what you're saying, it's the actual gameplay experience over the technology that's really drawing in on this.
People trying new things,
Yeah.
Nice. I like permadeath. Like, they used to be the permadeath was what a lot of games had, there's no saves, and now we're bringing permadeath back because it adds that intensity, like I better not die because it actually sucks dying. Now it's just like, oh, you're dead, you're restarting from 10 seconds ago. Congrats.
Leslie doesn't die, he multiplies. Jameson.
Recently, finally finished BioShock Infinite. The last thing I played recently. Now I'm on the Xbox One, bouncing between Black Flag and the Titanfall beta.
Why?
Why?
Is there anything about these games that you find unique or something that is really, keeping you tuned in?
Well, for Assassin's Creed, the thing that I'm really digging is kind of the second screen interaction, which is, I think, kind of the big push for this generation. They're getting a lot of social interaction and kind of doing things. Like, I can interact with my game when I'm not in front of my game. Like, I think that's a big push for this generation. And Titanfall, just because it's Titanfall. Those guys are doing some really cool stuff. I have a lot of issues. I'm colorblind, so I have a lot of issues playing first-person shooters, and I'm finding that the way that they've set things up and the accessibility is at a high level for Titanfall, so I'm having a good time with it.
Titanfall's awesome. I jumped on this robot and I was rodeoing this guy, right? And then I kill him, I bust out all his wires, and I shoot him in the sky, and then I land on another robot, and then I kill that robot. And I'm like, this is so badass.
I hate when that happens. Cordy?
So I've been playing Titanfall beta. I would say that would be the most. I'm just a total weirdo for robots anyway. So anything that is like giant mechs that you can customize and crawl in and kick ass is just fun. Love it.
Awesome. Let me guess, Titanfall beta?
Yes.
Even if the answer was no, yes.
Yes.
I figured out that this week, if you want to get a big, get the room going, all you got to do is say Titanfall beta. That's what I'm saying.
But that's not the only beta I'm playing. I'm also playing Hearthstone. Yeah. It's basically Magic the Gathering, but refined and streamlined, and I don't have to collect so many cards. It's more fun and cheaper, I think. The reason I play these betas because I'm curious about how other studios do their betas, and okay, it's a game not complete and under development, and see the actual evolution of the game. If you're in Starbound early, if you're in Minecraft early, or in Rust early, you can see the progress. It's actually a good, as a game development student, it's a good way to see how development goes and see how this really unpolished game turns to a polished game, or how it can turn from this unpolished game into this crappy game. And it's like, what did they do, what happened, and what decisions did they make? So that really interests me.
I like that. I was talking to Patrick Driggett, one of our graduates, and there's another graduate that does AI at Ready at Dawn, Dave Newbelt, and Patrick was talking about how Dave will play every AAA game that comes out and tell you what algorithms are being used in the AI, because he's just so attuned to everything that's going on out there. And I don't know how he ever sleeps or anything, but yeah, it's pretty amazing. All right, before we are going to have some time to do some Q&A, and I know Nat, I can just go out in the crowd and hold the mic, I guess, if that works with you. But before we do that, I want to, the question that I always love to hear, and then I'm going to ask you, and we're going to start with Elbert and work our way back, is what is the most profound bit of advice you would give for the student that is still in school, no matter what their degree? What should they be doing while they're in school? What advice do you have to offer them? What would you do differently if you could turn back the clock?
I would say be an entrepreneur. Don't rely on industry jobs or someone giving you a job. Make your own job. It's really the best thing you can do for yourself.
I think for me it would be know now that even though you're technically a student, what you're really preparing for is being a student for a lifetime. And it's really critical that you keep your mind open to continual learning, because really what's going to happen is you're just going to flip the switch. Like right now you're paying to learn, and then it switches and you get paid to learn. But you will continue to learn, and you need to stay totally open to that.
So I have two pieces of advice. One is a piece that I give to people who are prospective students and asking me what it takes to go here. And the thing that I tell all of them is you've got to be able to put everything you've got into this. Don't let anything in your life stop you from putting every bit of time and effort you can into this education, because I can promise you that what you will come out of here with is something that will be very valuable for you and help you going forward. The second thing is be careful on social media. There's the things that you say now will come back to haunt you. And just be very careful about being positive and understanding that people are, there's a chance that someone who is reading what you say could have an impact on your future employment. So.
You get drunk and use Twitter at night?
Try not to.
I'd say what you get out of Full Sail is what you put into it, basically. This industry, whether it's games or film, a piece of paper isn't going to get you a job. It's going to be your skills, it's going to be your attitude, your personality, how you work with people. I mean, honestly, a lot of difference between whether we hire someone or not is a lot of how well do they interact with the team, Some of that is them, part of that's just chemistry. You could have a great personality, might not have great chemistry. And, as someone who spent his Friday nights home, screwing around with QBasic, we don't always have like the most personal skills, so work on those. Just get out there and just be social, because that's a big part of just working in any industry now. Also, I had something else that was important. Oh, well, I'll think of it later, and then I'll tell you.
Don't be a tool.
Yeah.
So actually, I have some questions here. Some people that have tweeted in from Full Sail to hashtag Full Sail on air. Hashtag. This is actually from Rory Hopkey, and a great question. I'm going to start with Cordy, because I think she has an answer for this. But how can an audio student work in games? What advice do you have for those audio people that want to break into games?
Meet Zachary Quarles. No, I'm kidding. Brett knows he is. So, audio for games is awesome. And there are so many things that audio lends, right? From, you think about scores and soundtracks and music to films. We've seen audio for games explode in that same way. And it's not just about, enhancing the moment or the mood or the story time or the impacts. And I'm sure Chance has interesting stories about recording sounds and the layers and layers of audio that go into making things sound as authentic as possible. But now that we find ourselves in a place where interaction models are changing, and there's a lot of tells. There are things that can be done with 3D positional audio to tell you if something is on your left or something on your right or something in front of you, whether it's quiet or whether it's loud. There's just so many different things that can be done. So if you wanted to break into something like that, I think, again, Indie Channel is a great channel to go, so you can, cut your teeth and get out there and have some demos and some demo examples. And then again, the networking with other audio professionals in the industry. There are a lot of really, and depending on what you want to do, it could be from recording to composing. I know a lot of fabulous composers that have just totally made the leap from transitioning from film and television that work exclusively in interactive entertainment now. So there's lots of opportunity. It's about just making sure that people know who you are, having great examples of your work, and getting your name out there.
Great advice. I have a lot of people that are tweeting in with this question or a variation thereof. James Amaro Sina, I might be saying that wrong, I apologize. What did Nintendo do wrong with the Wii U, and what can they do to become relevant again? James,
man.
you will never work at Nintendo, okay? Because this will be up live somewhere. So,
I'm actually a huge fan of the Wii U.
what do you like about it?
I was telling some people earlier, like, you buy a Nintendo console, or I buy a Nintendo console for the same reason every time, is to play the first party stuff. And you're always got your Mario Kart, your Zelda, and the thing that they've always struggled with is third-party support. And that it continues to be a struggle, and I don't have advice for them on how to fix it, but that's what they're going to have to fix somehow if they want to continue to succeed in this industry.
Anybody else care to comment?
So I just want to say that I think there's a difference, and I think it's an important distinction between devices and content. And what Jameis is referring to is content and getting third-party, people onto the device. The device itself, there's a difference between the hardware and the features that get applied. And when you think about building a device, that's where you really want to focus in and have like very specific things, right? It's very difficult to be an all-in-one device. You may have features that expand your device from a software perspective, but the device itself needs to be distilled with absolute keen focus. And I feel like that may have been a misstep where the device itself, the actual hardware piece, was trying to be too many things at once and may have confused the audience and the developers that would use it.
Interesting.
Well, another thing that I could say is like for second screen experiences, a lot of times people would only want to look at their screen. They bought this 50-inch screen, which is 1080p, 120 hertz. And why would you look at something down on your lap that's a lot smaller? So they need to make games that incorporate, like they said, Rayman Legends, where you have a separate player looking at a different screen. So they need more of those type of games that actually revolve around the controller rather than putting like old genres and trying to fit it in there. They need to create new genres that actually revolve around the screen.
Thank you. All right, one more here for Jameson, and I like this one from Gus Baxter. I'll read it in his voice. Really, though, what happened to Oddworld?
Well, I mean, Oddworld apparently is making a comeback right now. But when we were there, we finished up Stranger's Wrath. We were attempting a port to the PS2 as part of our new agreement with EA that ended up not being feasible. So when that happened, a lot of the marketing was pulled, and we ended up with a very highly rated game that didn't get any marketing, and that's going to kill you every time. So, we tried a bit to kind of figure something else out, but the timing just kind of didn't work out for us. So.
This is from Andrew McDonald, and I'll just open it up for everybody here. Do you think the second screen feature is a fad, or is it the future?
I'd rather use that than 3D probably. So I don't know. It's something that I hope more games include, but I couldn't tell you. I've never used it, but I probably would if I had the need to. So I don't know. Let's see. I have nothing good to offer for this question, basically.
Can I?
Albert's poised and ready to jump, so go.
Well, so I keep saying I work on Smart Glass. So I've been working on Smart Glass since they announced it, or even way before that. And the thing is, like, we've been researching, we've been trying all these different ways of exploring second screen. And, from what we've learned is, having two screens, like where you have one on your lap and one on your screen doesn't really work. So we're kind of moving more into like, what can we do as a second screen that's not when you're with you, like, Jameson said, like with Assassin's Creed 4, he enjoys the second screen experience because it doesn't compete with his main experience, but it augments it when you're not by the game. So it actually helps. It's a big marketing push to keep the game in your mind by, being in your pocket. And that's actually a very good feature that people actually, light up when you talk about it.
Were you asking about the, like, when you have the 3D feature and you can see two different screens, are you talking about having like an iPhone or a second screen physically?
The second one.
Oh, okay. I thought you were asking because there's a feature, if you have a 3D TV, some games will allow two people to be playing and see two different screens because the refresh rate, you know? So that, I would say, I think is here to stay. I think a lot of integration with Android, iPhone. They're going to find ways to keep you playing the game when you're not playing the game, basically, keep you hooked. So I think the second screen stuff is here to stay.
Cordy, did you
So
wanna comment?
how many of you out there work with 2 monitors? How many of you out there work with 3 monitors? Exactly. We are just still on the surface of massive, massive amounts of information. Whether that information be something you're using to learn, whether it be something you're using to create, or whether it be something you're using to entertain yourself or update yourself. And so, not only do I think second screen is here to stay, I think there will be many more screens in our future.
So 3rd screens and 4th screens.
Oh, yeah. Somewhere.
Thank you. Daniel Adamitsky wants to know, and I'm going to broaden this question a little bit to include art, but what are some tips for creating a good portfolio that stands out?
I would say focus on something. If you're looking to get a job at a major studio, typically you're going to be doing something fairly specialized. So I'd say look at what you're good at and what you like to do, and try to focus on 1 or 2 things. Get everything else in there too if you can. Anything that's good, but just if you have a focus, it might be easier to find a job because they're like, we need a guy to do this or girl to do this, and if you have those skills, then there you go.
From a design perspective, it's really difficult to get a sense of what someone's capable of from a portfolio. So what I tend to enjoy and recommend to people is to have some kind of a almost like a walkthrough of like, here's what I did and why, and kind of a walkthrough process of the content they're creating. So that way I can get a sense of like, what is the thought process? Are they focusing on the right things? Do they understand why they're doing things? And would they be able to make the right kind of choices on the fly as we're kind of developing things later?
And people really just want to understand how you think. So having a tutorial or a walkthrough or a breakdown of what you're doing, I would say and focusing on something particular is a great way to get yourself through the door. And then know that when you are on site doing interviews, a lot of the questions you'll get are not about a wrong answer or a right answer. It's really questions that enable the person that you're speaking with go through your thought process with you. People want to know how you think, how you apply yourself, how you derive answers, and what reasons you use to put behind those. So when you think about putting your content online, try to think with that same kind of context in mind, and it'll really help people understand what you're aiming for.
I'd say if you want to be more like a developer or producer type role, like having published games, mobile, Steam, wherever it may be, having a finished game that represents you is a big testament of like, I can finish work, I can get the game across the finish line and actually get people to play and get feedback and actually say, I've improved on that game. So you could say like, I've gone through the full loop many times, 5 times, 6 times, 8 times, and that speaks a lot for your portfolio.
Also, some companies will give you tests. If you apply, for instance, if we have an animator applying and we like them, they can have a great reel, but we give them a test, because so many times we've had like a great animation reel, and we'll get a test back. They have 2 weeks to do a test, and we're like, this is the same guy? It's like horrible. It's night and day. So yeah, expect to do some tests if you're an animator, because that's pretty common. I don't know if you do art tests. People get hired.
Tests.
Yeah, model this.
Nice. So there's some guy named Grant Schonkweiler that wants to know, how did you get your first industry job?
I graduated from Full Sail. I actually went out to California looking for work and slept in my car for I was there for a month, but I slept in my car for about 2 weeks in a Bally's parking lot, because they have running water and everything, shower. Hard to get a job if you smell bad. And I didn't find a job. I failed miserably, and I was driving back to Florida just to go back home, and I stopped in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where I'm originally from. Any Okies here? Yeah, we got like 2. Half the population's here. Sweet. All right, I tell you what, man, dang old thing. So I reckon I got myself a job. No, I got an internship at a company called 2015, and I started halfway through Medal of Honor Allied Assault. Anyways, after that, a bunch of us, 22, 23 of the people, of the 30 people there left, and we created a new company and had to come up with something that would, compete with Medal of Honor, and that was how Call of Duty came about. So anyways, the point is internship. Get an internship if you can, because that's kind of your foot in the door. Actually, QA is a good way to get into games. We've had a lot of guys in QA who've worked in QA for a few years, and at night they would stay and they'd start working on their BSPs and their maps, or on their art, and they get feedback from the other devs. And yeah, that's a great way to just get your foot in the door and then be around people who are experienced. It's not the highest paying job, and it can get a little monotonous, but it is a good way to get into the door for games.
I got very lucky. The last few months I was here at Full Sail, and at the time Gamma Sutra had their own forums, and I was posting on there and found that one of my classmates was actually on there bashing the school. So we just kind of had a bit of a dialogue on there about, basically what I was saying is, you get what you put into it, and coming from that angle. And the CEO of a new company that was starting up in San Diego, they were grabbing a bunch of EverQuest guys from Variant, and they were starting an MMO for Square. He saw what I had to say, contacted the school and asked to get in touch with me, get my resume, and everything went well from there.
So for me, it was internships, for sure. And that started here in Florida while I was still going to school. I was, my degree is in film, and started working on the backlots. And a lot of that was free internships. I hear they have paid ones now, which is pretty awesome. So yeah, starting on the backlots and having the best possible attitude for no matter what I was doing. And it's just and that's how you get in. You start meeting people, and you do a good job. People recognize that, and they remember you for the next time. And then that just keeps building and building. And I highly recommend, if you have an opportunity to work, even if it's a volunteer thing, if it's volunteer, and even if it's something that may be totally unrelated or you think is unrelated, something that shows that you have, thought leadership, that you can communicate well within teams, that you can coordinate things, that you can complete things, whatever you may be doing in your community, whether it be through some other organization, all of those will help you and look really, really good on your resumes.
Can I say something blasphemous?
I think now you have to.
So I actually didn't want to work in the game industry after I graduated. Let me say my story. Yeah, right, Grant. Well, because back then when I graduated, being an indie developer was a lot harder. It wasn't there wasn't a lot of tools, and going through final project, I felt very satisfied that I made a game. I actually got it published, and 5 people bought it for $20 each. Isn't that crazy? And because of that, I was like, I want to get paid. So I'm like, well, that time the game industry was very notorious for underpaying their developers. I'm like, I'm gonna do contract work. I'm gonna work at Microsoft. I'm gonna just do normal work, and for a good reason, because to expand my skill set. Because I felt like I wasn't quite ready yet as a programmer, so I jumped into being a tester actually. It was actually a hybrid tester developer. So you actually do QA and develop tools, which was a good leeway for me. And from there, time went on, and suddenly the tools started showing up. XNA showed up, and I was like, oh, I'm ready for this. And I started working on that. And slowly I actually started going back into the industry. I started working at Big Fish Games, but even working at Big Fish Games, it wasn't for games. It was in the e-commerce side, which was close enough for games. And then suddenly I'm back doing independent work, and then now working at Microsoft.
Okay, let me see. This was a very interesting question, and I don't even know how to. This one goes to Chance, and it's from Sydney Lowe. Chance, your hair reminds me of Squall Leonhardt. Do you own a gun blade?
Who?
Serious question.
I couldn't hear you. My hair reminds of what?
Squall Leonhardt. Squall.
Oh, Squall from Final Fantasy? Yes.
Do you own a gun blade? And this is a serious question.
I get Bill Hader a lot.
Yeah.
And then sometimes Pau Gasol, which I don't even see.
Okay.
I usually don't get video game characters. That's cool. And what was the second part of the question?
No, you got it both, man. That was awesome.
All right, thank you.
So, okay, this is actually I like this question. Actually, has been retweeted a few times. Originally from Mark Diaz. Are VR headsets coming to this generation of consoles, and how will that affect design decisions in the future releases?
I sure hope so. I've used the Dev Rift, and it's amazing. Yeah. Honestly, I think if Nintendo wants to get back in the game, they should purchase them.
I said it. Yes.
Jameson, I'm looking at you, man.
I hope so. I've also tried it out as well, and it's incredible what it's capable of even now. And I even hear that the Valve one is even better, so I'll be curious to try that out. But it's one of those things that feels very gimmicky, right? But the chance for the immersion that we dream of as game developers is too big to not at least put some effort into and see if we can make it work.
Yeah, so a VR, yes, Oculus Rift. Have any of you had a chance to put one on? Yeah. And you like it, I can tell by your response. It makes me want to vomit personally, but that's a problem I have. So I think VR is really, really cool, but I also think don't discount mixed reality and augmented reality as well. I think we're just going to continue to see our worlds expand, and this kind of goes back to the second screen stuff. I think that there's a whole blending of things that are going to come about and be important in the future of gaming.
So I owned Oculus Rift, but I sold it. No. I sold it because I want the new version before it gets too cheap on eBay. But I'm a big believer. I had so many ideas, like having a quadricopter follow you around while you're wearing an Oculus, so you can have a third-person experience and cool stuff like that. I love it.
Okay, this question comes from Lorenzo Sanchez, and I want to be somewhat sensitive that there's a lot of people that are asking about the Irrational Games decision and everything, and I guess the question would just be, they're making the decision to start fresh and go in a new direction. How would you advise those that were affected by the studio closing and everything? Do you see more of this happening in the industry in the future, or was this just kind of a weird thing?
I've been through 4 studio closures in my career. I mean, it sucks, but it's unfortunately a pretty common thing for us. I haven't seen much of a change. I've seen lots of different reasons for it over the years. I guess all I mean is it's not a shock to anyone that it would happen. And I think it's something that all of us at least always have in the back of our minds, that this industry is very volatile and we have to be ready to make another choice if we have to, and be ready to move on if that happens.
Anybody else care to comment on that one?
It's true. It's awful. It sucks, but it happens. It's not the first. It certainly won't be the last. And as Jameson said, there's always lots of different reasons. Typically, a lot of them business reasons. And don't forget, as passionate as you are about gaming or being gamers and doing creative, at the end of the day, it is a business, and it's a growing business. It's a very expensive business, and there's a lot of risk taking. And sometimes you just place your bet in the wrong place or you take the wrong risk. And the best thing that you can do from that is learn and move on. Learn quickly. It's okay to fail. It's recover from failure. That's important.
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't fail, you're not trying hard enough.
That's right.
Yeah. So, okay, we're almost out of time here, but I'm going to ask a question that comes from Sean Korb, and this is one that, for those that know me, know that I always love to talk about networking. And there's good ways and bad ways to network and to meet people. You guys are approached constantly by fanboys at conferences and different things like that. So talk a little bit about the difference between networking and being a fanboy. What gets your attention? What do you recommend to avoid the fanboy moniker?
I guess just talk to me like a normal human being. I mean, don't be like, oh, just go like talk to me like, hey, what's up, and just it's just networking 101. It's like don't be like up there in the face. Don't be asking for a job. Just talk to them like you're interested in what they're doing. Talk about their work. Talk about something you're in common with, without really the agenda of trying to get a job. It's just that's just networking, because people will detect that. It's not that hard to like, oh, this guy just wants to use me to get to this job. So
I think, take just a moment to think about what you're going to say before you say it. And I think that that's a big difference between people who are, in there to network and being serious about networking versus the fanboy, right? Or girl. They will, they're in the moment, right? So it's very easy to distinguish between that. Have any of you ever been to Comic-Con? Okay, so that's fan, right? You go there, all the people you talk to, fan, boys and girls. You go to GDC, you're looking at more serious, more networking, more questions about career or techniques or innovation or ideation. So that's how I would separate the two, and it just kind of depends on, read your environment, learning to read people and figure out which character you're going to play, what is it that you're looking for. And it's very easy, I think, to confuse the two when you feel super passionate about something. And be careful about the route of questions that you might go down, because the last thing you want to do is walk away offending the very person that you're trying to impress.
I think one of the first things I like to hear when someone approaches me is kind of what their angle is. Like, are they a programmer? Are they a designer? Like, what are they? What? So I can kind of frame my thoughts and responses around kind of what's pertinent to them. But the other thing is to ask questions that are easy to answer. Like when someone says, "Hey, what's the industry like?" That's an hour-long answer that I don't really have time to give. But if people ask very particular things, like where did you get your start, or how do you develop for this, things that I feel like I can at least answer quickly and keep the questions going, I think that works out a little better.
I've noticed I get a lot of people who, they're like, I don't really, I'm not an artist, I'm not a programmer, but I have a lot of really good ideas for games. And they tell you their idea, and it's like you're this dog, and you're in medieval armor, and you're fighting chickens, and you're like, I'm like, but what's the game? Like they did describe like a scenario and story, but haven't described what the actual gameplay is. So I guess if you approach someone who's in development, like just know that there's no like idea guy job. You have to actually work, like do something. You just can't sit around and think of game ideas that won't get made. Is that kind of a downer? So yeah, just if you're talking to someone who works at a company you'd like to work for in the future, just talk to them one-on-one. Just they're a regular person, you are too, and just kick it.
Respond to this question.
Okay.
I have a great idea for a game.
Okay, what is it?
Oh, wow. Okay, that's not what I expected. Wow, I really don't. Yeah.
Oh, man. I don't know how I would respond to that, to be honest. I think it would depend on the situation. Generally, I would probably say something along the lines of, that's good. Good for you.
If anyone anyone makes a game with a dog and armor fighting chickens, let me know, because I want to play it. I just came up with that right now. That's my next project.
That's brilliant.
I guess, one of the classic examples that you hear used a lot in the industry is the elevator pitch. And hopefully that's something that you're learning here at school, and how to be a pitch, how to pitch your ideas, regardless of what you do. Everybody has ideas, and, think about how you're framing that up in the shortest, most succinct, creative way as possible, right? So we always call it our OLC, which is our one-line concept. What is your one-line concept? If you can't state what you're going to do and get somebody excited about it in 3 sentences or less, you're not going to keep their attention. So think about that. Think about, if you do catch their attention, what is the next thing that you're going to say? Well, probably better be something about your features. So you're going to need to know what your top 5 features are and how those feed in. And your features need to relate to your one-line concept. So make sure that those 2 things are interwoven. So if you're dying to get your pitch out there and somebody asks you that, have something, short, break it into little vignettes. And if you grab their attention for the first few seconds, then make sure you have your next lineup of dialogue ready to go.
Yeah. I asked them, can I see your prototype?
So build it would be a good answer then, too.
Yeah, I
huh?
mean, it's way more impressive to see something working, and the fact that if they built a prototype means they put work into it, they've tried out ideas, and I can actually see it rather than imagining it.
Nice. Okay, last question for Jameson, have to do with social networking. You're out there a lot. You're monitoring a lot of things. What are the quick do's and don'ts for those that are utilizing social networking to be noticed?
Don't be negative. A lot of people tend to talk about what they don't like in games, and you never know who's watching. The nice thing, the thing that I recommend right now is to get on Twitter, because it's such an open platform right now. Like, people are, celebrities, everyone are just talking about their day. Like, it's a very easy place to learn and to interact with people, and I get at least a few questions a week that are just easy to answer, and sometimes I'll even take them and make a blog post out of them if it's something I feel like even a lot more people would like to see. But it's just a very easy place to just kind of be yourself. I get to know a lot of people through social media now, and then when I see them in person, they come and say, "Hey, I'm, X," and I'm like, "Oh, I totally remember you because something that you said or the way that you interacted was like a normal person," which was nice. But it's good. It's pretty open, and you can get to meet a lot of people that way.
Thank you. We actually had about 15 other Chance's hair questions, but I'm gonna bypass those right now.
You.
So, thank you guys. Thank you very much for being here with us.